Yesterday, Farage wrote a piece for the Telegraph in which he castigated David Cameron for his smug belief in that Project Fear, run by him and the Chancellor George Osborne, would hoodwink the British electorate into voting Remain, and then when that failed, that his personal animosity to Farage himself would continue. And then he talks about the betrayal of Brexit, and there's no place for Farage in this divided, sinking hulk of a Conservative Party. It's very personal, and he clearly feels wounded by the presence of David Cameron and by David Cameron's refusal to countenance Suella Braverman's invitation to Farage to be part of the Conservative Party. Clearly he wants it, and clearly while Cameron is there, he's never going to get it. Well, thank God for Cameron. I can't believe I'm saying this, because Cameron, of course, was the disaster that produced his arrogance was the disaster which produced the referendum and failed to produce a coherent and comprehensive Remain campaign. Certainly, Cameron was very smug. I think he was crowing from his success at the Scottish referendum and making the Queen purr. But in the end, I must say, I slightly salute Cameron for standing up to the barrage of Farage, and for recognising that this isn't Farage's language is about the what he calls inflammatory language. He says that he's accused of inflammatory language. And he says, does that mean my stating the fact that 3.5 million immigrants have come to the UK over the past 3 years alone, or that under the current Tory government more than one migrant enters the UK every minute, or that under the Conservatives and Labour governments before them, more people have come to the UK over the past 25 years than in all British history before that? Well, you see, the problem is Farage doesn't really analyse the details. The details are that since free movement, a huge number of people have come to the UK from the EU, and that isn't calculated. Once we take that out, and once they go away, there's a void for all those UK, for all those EU people who worked here in the UK, who lived in the UK, no longer here. Now everybody is counted as a foreign citizen. Of course, the immigration rockets, and immigration rocketed under Labour because of the expansion of the EU, and therefore the rise in, quote, migration. But it was just simply in the rise in the free movement of EU citizens around the EU. The rise, we've had to have a rise in migration to fill those, to fill the jobs which were otherwise being filled by EU people, by EU people. And inflammatory, well, the inflammatory language which Farage and indeed Sunak and co, Braverman, have picked up is language which is likely to produce damage. And there's a really good example of it, which I will talk about in a later video, from Greece. Greece has been using inflammatory language about foreigners since the early part of the century. And I know I was there, and I called it out at the time, and there's a story today which I think needs addressing. That is the direction that Farage's language is moving. That is what happens. This language of hostility, eventually leads to actions of hostility. And this isn't nuanced language at all. This isn't language which debates the issues. This is language of hate. And this is the language of nastiness. And there is a problem with migration, and there is a problem with the nature of Europe. Both of these problems are real. The solutions are wrong. The solution to the problem of Europe, I think, was not Brexit. I don't think that Europe has been improved, and so potentially we have a monster across the channel, and it's now moving further right wing, which will make rejoining it harder, and our rejoining it will make it harder to change it into something which is benign. Maybe we have to give up on that project. Maybe we have to think of another union, because confederation, union is the way forward. Individual countries in this new world are not likely to survive. We need confederations and relationships. So one of our options is to forge a better relationship with Europe, and I hope that the Labour government will be able to do so, because the Conservative government was not good enough at that, and its one opportunity to do so in Albania, for example, was scuppered by the general election. But the hate language needs to go, and we need a more nuanced debate. We're not going to get it from Farage. And the Rwanda plan needs to go, because the Rwanda plan is not a deterrent. It's the language of hate made real, because it's predicated on the idea that there's a country that people do not want to go to. There's a country which is so terrifying, that alone is enough of a deterrent. That is, I cannot for the life of me understand why a country like Rwanda or anywhere would want to be the bogeyman like that. And the reports of the 4 refugees from Sri Lanka living in Rwanda because they were placed there by the British government, having reached Diego Garcia, and the misery that they are reported to be in, that tells a great deal, doesn't it?